Right, hello there, chums. Adam Clery from FourFourTwo here for you. And if I had said to you on like Christmas Day that in 2.5 short months, Everton will be the form team in the Premier League, you would have said, that's a weird thing to say on Christmas Day. We're supposed to be having a nice time. Also, what are you doing in my house? But yet somehow it is true, because since David Moyes has taken over from 𝗘𝗫𝗧𝗏𝗧, no team in the Premier League has got more points, which is just the way you have to word that, because they've got the same amount of Arsenal, so they're joint top. They've got like 3 more than Liverpool. So how's he gone and done that then? Because this Everton side that was circling the drain under 𝗘𝗫𝗧𝗏 does not look that much different from this Everton side, which is apparently completely unstoppable. And the answer to that question is something very subtle, something very effective, and something you wouldn't previously have said was at all Moyesy. Right, so to start, I've got this really complex Opta graph to show you. Now don't click off the video, like I know it's really off-putting and impenetrable, but just bear with me because you'll get a laugh out of this. We've got the percentage of chances that are being taken on this axis going up and the alleged quality of said chances on this axis along the bottom. Now obviously in an ideal world you want to be doing well on both of those counts, so the best performing teams in the league are all up here in the top right somewhere. Or rather best performing in terms of scoring anyway, like Brentford and Tottenham are way out here because regardless of how they've been defensively, one considerably worse than the other, they do score a lot of goals, and Forest, who are having a brilliant season, are doing so mostly on their defensive stability and the fact they don't concede a lot, so they're a little bit further down. But Everton are all the way down here, and that is absolutely minging. They do not create and they can't finish, but this graph is only accurate up to January the 10th, the day after, I think, 𝗘𝗫𝗧𝗏𝗧 was sacked. And Opta, very kindly in the article they wrote on this subject, also published an updated one since David Moyes took over at Everton, but just before the Crystal Palace game. Would you like to see it? Arguably the most lethal team in the Premier League over those 6 or 7 games. Like, they could not create good chances and they could not take the ones they were making, and now virtually nobody is making better chances or taking a higher percentage of them. Like, let's not forget just how bad things were when they got rid of Dyche. Like, they were here in the league, and there's only Southampton who really are giving this record low Premier League points tally a hell of a go this season, who'd scored less than they had. And yet, somehow, little over 1 month later, they're fine, they're safe, they will stay up. They're on 30 points, and 32 kept you up last year. And better yet, this is the Premier League table since David Moyes arrived. Joint best defence, literally in the Champions League places, and as we've seen on that graph, ruthlessly efficient in front of goal. So how has he done that then? Well, as alluded to in the introduction, by changing almost literally nothing, but the changes he has made, subsequently changing everything. That makes sense. But to explain, I'm going to take you back to 𝗘𝗫𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏's Everton last season, because the preconceptions you have about them are mostly correct, yes, but they were a better team than they looked, I think, anyway. Like, Everton fans will tell you that they weren't this sort of expansive, exciting team, but likewise, they weren't this, like, constantly negative, deep defensive team either. If you go back and look at last season's numbers for the total number of high turnovers, which is a great measure of how aggressive you are out of possession, Everton rank really, really highly. Like, 5th in the entire Premier League for that stat is astonishing, especially when you look at the teams that are in front of them. It is like the high-pressing, best attacking sides in the entire division. But then, while that's all well and good, you look at how many times those high turnovers actually led to a goal, and they drop all the way down to 3rd bottom in the league. But there was only Luton and Burnley who sank without a trace, who were actually worse at turning a regain in the final third into a goal. But then you also get on the old Opta stats for last season and you look at their preferred way for creating chances, and they were one of the most direct teams in the league. They would go back to front as quickly as they possibly could. But then, and this is absolutely eye-watering, you look at the amount of chances they made from passing sequences. So 10 is usually the magic number here. If you can string 10 passes together and then do something with it, that's considered like good build-up sequence. The amount of times last season Everton had 10 or more passes, and it ended with either a touch in the box or a shot, doesn't matter which, just something that gets up that end of the pitch. They did it 28 times in the entire season. That is less than once a game. Like, for context, Man City had nearly 300 of these. But believe it or not, my dear chums, these two seemingly separate things, like one, being really bad at opening teams up when you've got possession, and two, being really bad at scoring goals when you take possession off the other team, these two things are connected. And that all comes down to this system, the 4-2-3-1, the exact same one that David Moyes is using, but the way Dyche had Everton implement it created a lot of problems. And the main one, fundamentally, was that it was very, very rigid. Sean Dyche wanted it to be compact. He wanted players to not allow a lot of space. He wanted them, whether they were high or whether they were deep, to stay largely in their positions, not get dragged around, and not leave little pockets of space. And that meant that out of possession, they often ended up with these two banks of four, with 𝗘𝗫𝗧𝗏 sort of assisting the centre forward in either doing the pressing or just blocking off the passing lanes. It did look like a 4-4-2 quite a lot of the time. And that also means that when they did want to be aggressive and show a little bit of ambition, it was these four players who would then step up to do the press, with these six backing them up when possible, but not at the expense of breaking up the shape. But straight away, through this admittedly gross oversimplification, you can start to see what the problem is, because if one of these four nicks the ball back, which they were quite good at doing last season, remember they had all those high turnovers, at most, you've got four players to then attack from there. You're never going to get any proper support from the fullbacks from all the way back there. Neither of these two central midfielders would dare come out of this position and leave a bit of space. So hence, lots of high turnovers, but never enough players to really make them count. Like, this is a goal from right at the start of the season that highlights that. Jack Harrison here, 𝗘𝗫𝗧𝗏, Calvert-Lewin and McNeil, they have all broken up this end of the pitch quite quickly, but Brighton just have plenty of players back. So what's this, like a 6-3-4? They're totally outnumbered here. And Ashley Young, who Harrison's infield run should be opening up this space for, is just too far behind. He's not really an option there. Harrison runs into traffic because they haven't got to worry about the overlap. Everton then lose the ball in this position, and because they're now strung out across the entire pitch with the four players actually attacking and everyone else just sort of gently jogging to join in, Brighton make two passes and they're in. And then later on, you see the other side of this problem. Everton force them into a mistake on the edge of their own box. They turn it over. And this is just why they don't really convert those situations. Like, numerically speaking, this isn't a terrible situation, but there's nobody free anywhere. They can't create an overload. They can't turn them back towards their own goal. Brighton, despite losing the ball, are still man for man. Like, I don't want to dwell too much on Dyche last season because we're here to talk about Moyes, but you can see, fundamentally, even with this 4-2-3-1, Everton's ideas are largely right, and they're quite close to executing it in an effective way. They just never seem to get the numbers where they need to get them. Which is why, if you think about the other teams in the Premier League that are quite good at attacking with a 4-2-3-1, they do one of two things with it. Like Chelsea, when they're being good and not being terrible, tend to have one quite creative player in the pivot here who then pushes into the front line, and one of the fullbacks inverts to give them this 3-2-5 shape. Or alternatively, Fulham at the minute, who just have a pack of bastards sitting in the pivot, make sure that their front line can shuffle across. 𝗈𝗶𝗴𝗍's very good in this channel, and Anthony Robinson has the legs and the energy to basically play two roles. So again, they end up in this 3-2-5 shape. And so, the point I've been building to for the last, like, a million minutes is that Everton, under Sean Dyche, were really bad at scoring goals out of the 4-2-3-1 shape because they just never set up situations where they got five players in the attacking line. Happened occasionally, but it was not designed to do that. And so this, my friends, the reason you clicked on the video in the first place, is what David Moyes has fixed so brilliantly. And this, although there have been changes and now there's injuries and stuff, this is what I would say Moyes' team has been under Everton so far. And first off, Jake O'Brien, he arrives in the summer. He is a bit part player, but he starts that game against Tottenham a couple of weeks ago, and Everton have won 4 and drawn 1 in the 5 since. Likewise, Jesper Lindstrom, he comes in the summer. He's another bit part player, but he started that game as well, and he's made that right-hand side his own. And just by changing these two players, Everton's right-hand side, they have completely altered the way this formation functions. And that is because O'Brien is a right-back who's extremely comfortable in the middle, and Lindstrom, despite being a right-sided attacker, has the energy, the intelligence, and the discipline to play a little bit further back. So all of a sudden, this rigid 4-2-3-1 that can't ever do anything can now have a back three. And the knock-on effect of that is that it allows Mykolenko, a player with a way better engine than Ashley Young, to join that front five. And would you look at that? Just by changing two of the personnel, Everton now have a way of getting that front five, having a balanced back three, and having players all in positions that really do suit them. Look at this still from the Liverpool game, and note the position of Mykolenko. He is so much further forward than Ashley Young was in the Brighton example. And that means that instead of Jack Harrison being doubled up upon because the defenders don't need to worry about the overlap, him and Ндai managed to pull the Liverpool defence all over the place, creating this space for Ндai to get a cross in. This is Mykolenko's heat map from Dyche's last game away to Bournemouth, right? It's a left back who's not really offering you much. He's trying to get up when he can, but by and large, he's just having to worry about the defending, right? Now, take all that in, absorb it. This is it from the Brighton match, which is a pretty similar sort of game when you think about it. They're both away from home, similar sort of challenges, teams that can play through you, teams that can press, and yet the difference in what Mykolenko now offers this team. He's doing so much more in this final third. And just having a fifth player in this attacking line makes you so much more assured in the final third. It's why Everton now look way better in possession, why they're being way less direct than they were under Sean Dyche. But the real fun thing about this, like it's good with the press, it helps with that as well, but the really good thing about this is what it does for Ндai. Because he is a player who is just 10 times better in this specific channel between the players and between the lines than he is stuck out on the left-hand side, having to provide all the width. Like, again, this is his heat map from one of the last Dyche games. I meant to write down which one it was. One of the later ones anyway, where they're all crap. You see, he's stuck out here. He can't influence the play where he wants to and jump that forward. And this is him in the Tottenham match instead. Like, so much more time spent in the danger area, around the box, in between the defenders, in between the midfielders, causing absolute havoc. Think about his goal. Like, he isn't just dropping deep to get the ball here, he's dropping really central as well, and then just turns and charges straight through the central channel of the pitch. Like, if you go to the wide shot, Pedro Porro is the man who should be keeping an eye on him, but because he's so far away from that position, he doesn't really know what to do. So instead, Archie Gray gets dragged along with him, then gets spun, and then that's it. And I know that maybe seems like a bit of a weird example, because Mykolenko isn't providing the width on that side. He's nowhere to be seen in this clip. But the fact that Ндai knows that that can happen, that the run will come at some point, means he can play his football in his preferred area. He hasn't got to worry that he's leaving the space entirely unguarded. And obviously it looks sort of very neat and everybody's got their own positions and stuff when you put it on a Subbuteo table, but having 5 players in the attacking line means that you can have 𝗘𝗫𝗧𝗏 play a lot closer to Beto, almost be like a proper front two. And because they can both then be so aggressive, knowing that there's just other players in the area and they're going to be properly backed up, like the energy and the work rate and the aggression they've had when they've been in the same team has been like a massive revelation for Everton. And plus as well, for a team who are no strangers to going direct, it also means having this sort of like hub of 2 players be that much further up rather than 𝗘𝗫𝗧𝗏 being all the way back. Means that the ball sticks at that end a lot better. Like, I'll show you Jordan Pickford's distribution from the Liverpool game, right? And you're going to think, oh, there's a lot of red on that. They didn't actually win too many of those balls going up. But this is quite an unusual graph, right, for goalkeepers now. Because if they do repeatedly go long, it tends to be into these channels to get in behind fullbacks or find a bit of space. So rarely do you see someone so consistently go right down the throat of the opposition like this. Looking at the numbers in terms of aerial duels, like between them, they won 14 or 15, which I think was just under 50%, which again doesn't sound that great, but it's against Konaté and Van Dijk facing a type of ball that massively favours the defender over the attacker. And even the ones they didn't win, they then immediately competed for the second balls. Everton got players around that area, so even though there's a lot of red here, a lot of those balls still cause problems for Liverpool. And of course, and this bit is maybe a little bit obvious, yes, as well as giving them a way of getting 5 players in the attacking line, they've also got now a really easy way of getting 5 players in the defensive line. O'Brien is just as happy at centre-back as he is at right-back. Mykolenko is obviously a defender by trade, so makes a very natural sort of left-sided sort of half wing-back, or just somebody in the back 5. And Lindstrom, as discussed, discipline, organisation, just good in that area as well. So that's about as natural a back 5 as you're ever really going to see. And they actually use this shape and the flexibility it gives you really well against Liverpool, because they sort of had this back 5 when they were deep, but when they wanted to push up the pitch, it could be aggressive with these front three. They were cutting off the passes to Gravenberch, and then the two central midfielders were then backed up by whichever one of the defenders on these sides was sort of opposite to the ball. So they have this like lopsided, flexible, rotating 4-3-3 as well. So bear in mind, this is a team whose entire problem was they played a 4-2-3-1 and it was so rigid they couldn't do anything with it. Now they've got ways of getting into a 3-2-5, a 3-2-5 the other way, and a 4-3-3. And for David Moyes to have come in and done this so quickly. This was a team that could not have done this last season, but in the space of 5 or 6 games, they've got it. It's all clicked for them. They know what they can do with this system and where they can be and how they can be more adventurous and be more solid at the same time. It has been, and I think I've made this word up, but it's probably that I've just never heard it before, a masterclass. A masterclass. Masterclass, but with Moyes. So yes, in the time he's been in charge, no team in the Premier League, because that's how you got to word this, has taken more points than Everton. If this was the start of the season, they'd be joint top. And to do all that so quickly with a team that looked so cohesively and individually terrible for the last, like, fully 18 months is remarkable. Remarkable. So to you, sir, David Moyes, I don't wear a hat, I doff this goal to you. Well played. And I know what you're thinking. You're actually just going to leave it there. You're not going to do a whole thing on how good Beto's been and his goal scoring and how that makes such a difference. And no, I'm not. We've already run over. We've both got things to be getting on with. I'm sure if he keeps scoring, I'll do a full one on him. How's that? Until then, though, please do let us know what you made of all this in the comments below. Are you an Everton fan? Can't you scarcely believe your little eyes? All thoughts and feelings down below, please. I ideally enjoy reading them all more than life itself, which is a joke and not a cry for help. You get me across all the social medias at Adam Clery, Clery. The 442 socials are in the corner of the video. And the magazine is on sale now because the magazine is always on sale. That's how magazines work. So until next time, my dear pals, I hope you've enjoyed this. I don't think I've ever done an Everton video before. Certainly not one about them being good anyway. Yes. Bye. 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 Bye.